Hello everyone, Silent here and welcome back to another Bedrock Edition tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how to build a fully automatic and AFK moss farm in your Bedrock Edition worlds. This moss farm might look a little bit complicated and hard to build, however I assure you it's actually a pretty straightforward little build process. This thing produces over 61,000 items per hour, and it's also an amazing bone meal farm as well. If you toss everything that you get from the farm into a composter, you'll get over 3,800 bone meal per hour, and that's not even counting all the bone meal that it's taking off the top to power itself. So this thing is fully self-sufficient, fully AFK, and it can help you power a variety of other bone meal based farms. So overall, this one different farm will give you 6 different items. It'll give you the moss blocks, moss carpets, seeds, flowering azalea, normal azalea, and of course bone meal as well if you choose to get bone meal from this design. On top of that, it doesn't really use that much bone meal per hour either. It uses about 2 stacks and 20 every 5 minutes of running the farm, and from 5 minutes of running the farm, you get an entire single chest and an entire inventory completely full of moss blocks. It really does crank out the items. So let's take a closer look at this moss farm, shall we? I assure you it is actually really simple. So everything from this left gold block over is just a double stone generator. It looks complicated, but I assure you it is actually really easy to build. Everything between this gold block and that one right there is simply the redstone to harvest the moss and also bone meal the moss as well. All of that is really simple. And then all the redstone from this block over to the right is another double stone generator. So overall, these stone generators make the build look really intimidating possibly, but they're really not that bad. They're big and soft and cuddly, I assure you. Of course, we have some item collection out the backside as well for the hopper minecarts. We have 5 hopper minecart unloaders at 4 times speed each, and these things keep up with the farm. It's actually a lot of items. You're gonna need quite a bit of storage or bone meal composting capacity. Anyway, let's go ahead and turn on the farm real quick and you guys can see this entire thing in action. So we flick the lever and then that starts bone mealing the moss down below. It spreads to the stone blocks up here. These pistons are harvesting the azalea and the carpets at basically the exact time that they grow, so you don't even really see them pop up. But however, you can see that we do have azalea and carpet items in there, and we're also getting seeds as well, so that's how you know we're actually harvesting those properly. The double stone generator on the left and right are constantly feeding into this area, breaking the moss and just kind of filling in this entire area with stone. Every time that the moss is completely removed, we bone meal it again for the highest bone meal efficiency. We could speed up the bone meal rate to give us more items per hour, but that would be less bone meal efficient and you would actually get less bone meal per hour. So I've decided to actually slow down the farm in order to make it more efficient, which might sound counterintuitive. So now that you've seen the farm in closer detail, let's talk about the nitty-gritty rates of this, because of course we're producing 6 different items. So in general, if you're just going for all the moss items, you'll get a total of 61,512 items per hour, which is mostly consisted of the 48,500 moss that you get from this farm per hour as well. If you want some more detailed rates on the exact item count per hour, you can see that on screen right now. The total bone meal output of this farm is actually 5,660. However, you need to recycle some of that bone meal back into the farm so that it continues running. So the net positive bone meal output is actually around 3,880. So overall, it's a pretty awesome farm. It's the fastest moss farm that I'm aware of on Bedrock Edition, and it's really not that complicated or laggy either. Because of the way that this farm works, it's a little bit difficult to actually see what's happening in this area right here. So a cool trick I would like to show you is the use of structure blocks. These allow you to peer into areas that otherwise would be pretty difficult to see, and this allows us to actually observe the exact happenings of what's going on with the bone mealing of the moss and the harvesting of the moss as well. As you can see, every single time this area gets bone mealed, it gets filled in with stone extremely quickly, and pretty much 100% of the time, every single moss block is destroyed, replaced with stone, and then bone mealed. When it comes to the mechanics of this moss farm, there isn't really much that you need to know besides the moss layout. Moss can only spread in a 7x7 diamond, and it will never never cover the corners of this diamond. So as you can see, no matter how much we bone meal this thing, the four corners of this will always be stone. So that is essentially the moss coverage area. Now, our moss farm gets incredibly high coverage. It's bone mealing everything in this area and converting it all into moss, except for the very middle block, which due to the mechanics that we're using, the middle block of the farm will never be converted to moss. However, that's not really a downside, and in fact, this actually does help efficiency compared to many other ways of doing it, and I don't think there's a moss farm possible that gets 100% coverage. Now, one really cool trick that you can use to actually spread moss upwards, which we are utilizing in this farm, is that you can have moss below the area, and as long as it is connected to the top of the area, the moss will spread to the very top layer. So as you can see in this area, we have a layer of rails, which counts as a connector block. Then we have some stone, and then at this layer, we have some slabs. So if we put a moss block right here and bone meal this guy, it is actually going to spread up to the very top of the farm. So we don't need to have a cedar block right in the middle. We don't need to have a cedar block up above it or, you know, somewhere up above the farm. We can actually hide it away below the item collection even. And as long as we have this slab in place, then we are good to go, basically. It's a really neat little trick, and thank you so much to Zulson012 for sharing that with me. It helps increase the efficiency and coverage of the farm by about 5 to 7%, and overall, it's just really awesome. So overall, this is a pretty cool little mechanic. However, this could possibly break in the future. If it does break, the farm will only need some very minor tweaks and changes in order to move the moss block upwards. If this ever happens, you can check the description down below, the pinned comment, and the iCards for a fix video, and I'll get that fix out basically as soon as I know that this farm is broken due to this mechanic change. But overall, I feel like this is probably going to stick around for a very long time. If you enjoy these kinds of Bedrock Edition tutorials, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I have a lot more great tutorials on the way that I think you will enjoy, and overall I have about 200 Bedrock Edition tutorials as well. So if you like Bedrock tech and farms, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel. Not only that, you'll help us reach 500,000 subscribers as well, which is totally insane. And other than that, let's hop into the tutorial, and thank you so much for the support. And let's hop into the tutorial, shall we? For your convenience, there's a full materials list down in the description of the video that'll tell you absolutely everything that you need to build this farm. The farm itself is going to be 19 blocks wide and 10 blocks deep. It is 10 blocks above the ground and 1 block below the ground as well. You're also going to need this little extension on the front side over here for your storage, item collection, and minecart unloaders. Now, this farm is not directional. However, if you choose to build it facing either east or facing west, you're going to have a much easier time at placing in all of the rails. However, you can build this facing north or facing south. It's really up to you, but east and west is going to be easiest. So go ahead and mark this out in your worlds and make sure that you have your orientation correct. This little area right here is where all of your storage is going to be, where your bone mealing is going to be happening, and where all of your minecart unloaders are going to be. Now, for the tutorial, the on and off switch of the farm is actually going to be over here on this side. However, it's very easy to just run a redstone line and then have your on and off switch be on this side as well. First thing we're going to do is place in our moss block. So line yourself up with your 5 block extension right here and go ahead and place in your moss block right in the center of this area. There should be 5 blocks to the back side of it, as you can see there, and 4 blocks to the front of it. We're now going to go ahead and place in ourselves a piece of redstone dust right there, a solid block beside that, repeater on 2 ticks, place in a block behind that, and then a comparator right there. Place in ourselves a temporary block right there, and then just a ring of hoppers going around in a circle like so. This is going to make a little bit of a clock that activates your bone meal dispenser. We're now going to place in a dispenser right here, and we'll be filling this up with bone meal later on. Place a hopper behind it like so, and now you need to get in yourself a temporary block right there and place in 4 hoppers going into it like so. We're going to be placing a button directly above this hopper so that the moss can grow upwards, and this hopper line is going to collect the carpets and azalea, etc. that grow on top of this moss and send it into your storage so that there is no loss. place in yourself a temporary block there with a piston right there, swoop around to this side, place in a redstone torch, and then another redstone torch like so. And now we're going to continue building upwards. So we want to surround this moss block with some solid blocks on all sides, that way no items get lost on the edges. And now we're simply going to fill in a platform of slabs in this area, basically a big 7x7 square centered on that moss block, but with the corners cut off. Once you've filled in all of your slabs, this is what it should look like, and make sure you fill in these slabs. If you don't, then basically no moss is going to grow on your farm. These slabs are crucial to the farm working. Now, the redstone components also count as connector blocks, so we don't need to worry about the torch or the piston or that button. Now, on this side over here, we're going to break this slab and replace it with 2 pieces of redstone dust, a block, and another redstone. So now it's time to install the floor for our rails. So we're going to go ahead and put solid blocks in all of these locations right here, and then a layer of upper slabs in place. This time we need it to be a 7x7 square with the corners, as there's going to be rail blocks above absolutely all of this. And that is essentially what your platform should look like. Before we put in the rails, I made a very small mistake on the back side here. This hopper clock actually does need to be moved out a block, so go ahead and remove all of this real quickly, place in a temporary block, and then your circle of hoppers needs to go right here. We're going to place in our 2 pieces of redstone, our block, and then our redstone dust, and then just go ahead and put that slab back in the corner like so. And now it's time for rails. So we're going to place in ourselves a solid block right here with a lever powering it on that side, and a lever powering it on this side as well. Go ahead and put yourself a slab there and a slab there with 3 redstone blocks in the middle. And for the rail layout, it's really simple. Place in yourself a powered rail there, rails going all the way around the corner and then back, and then a powered rail like that as well. Powered rail right here with rails going all in this direction, powered rail there, rails back to here, powered rail, rails, powered rail, and then you start from this corner as well. Powered rail, rails going all the way around the corner like so, and then 1 additional powered rail like so. Now keep in mind, if you're not building east or west, this process is going to be a little bit more tedious, and you'll need to build little extension bridges just to make sure that these rails all face the correct directions. So keep that in mind. You might need to fiddle with these rails a little bit. Anyway, now we're going to go back to the back side of the build, place in yourself 3 solid blocks right here, levers on the underside of all of these blocks to power those rails. And now it's time to install all of the pistons for your moss farm. So go to one of the corners, place in yourself a pillar of 3 blocks above that rail, and then place in yourself a regular piston facing downwards. We need to put a piston above absolutely every single piece of rail in this area so that we have a 7x7 platform of pistons. Of course, we don't need any pistons in the corners, so just go ahead and fill that in. And that is what your piston ceiling should look like. Keep in mind that you don't need pistons above any of these rails right here, since that is outside the moss grow range. So in total, this should be a 7x7 layout of pistons, minus the corners, and of course, you need to put redstone above all of those. So let's start by building the right side stone generator. Keep in mind that you'll need to mirror this build on the other side as well. So as you're building this, you might want to also build the other side, or do it however you want to. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and place in ourselves 7 obsidian along this edge of the stone platform, within that block and within that block right there, and that should be lined up with your piston ceiling as well. We're then going to go ahead and place in 7 obsidian in this area right here with 7 pistons facing upwards. Place in slabs all along this zone with a solid block on that end and a solid block on that end. We need 2 additional upper slabs right here with redstone dust, repeater on 3, and redstone all within that area. We're going to place in a layer of glass blocks to fill in this floor. We're going to be building with a lot of lava and water, and breaking a wrong block could flood everything with lava, so make sure you're building out of glass, that way you can see where that lava and water is. Anyway, we're going to place in 7 pistons facing forwards right here, 2 glass blocks to the left, and 2 glass blocks to the right. Fill in some temporary stone blocks in front of them, and then put yourself some solid blocks behind them like so. redstone above all of that, an upper slab on this corner, and then a solid block right there. You then want 2 pieces of redstone like so, and now we need to get a water bucket and place 1 water bucket within each one of these pistons. It might not appear that they are waterlogged, but if you look from the side, you'll see that those pistons are indeed waterlogged. And now we're going to place in a border of glass above all of those pistons. That makes the water way more obvious. Place in another glass block there, and then a line of it on the front right here as well. You can place in 1 lava source in the middle, and that will generate all of the stone for that lower stone generator. And now go ahead and put in a layer of solid blocks above all of that lava. 1 temporary block right there with an observer facing outwards towards the back of the farm. Place in a block right there. And now we want our 7 pistons facing forwards. This is going to be pushing in all of the stone to eliminate your moss and to be turned into moss. And now we're simply going to place in a solid block right there and redstone dust all within this area. We're going to flip around to this side and fill in our 2 block layer of glass right here as well. And now we can fill in our top layer of pistons for the upper stone generator. So 7 pistons right there, 2 glass to the left, 2 glass to the right, flip around to the backside, and you want solid blocks along that entire area like so. We're now going to go ahead and place in our temporary stone right in front of all of those pistons, and then you can fill in all of that with a water bucket on each one of those. And now to finish up the upper layer, we're going to put a layer of glass above all of those pistons, and then put a layer of glass on the front side as well. Place in your 1 lava bucket in the middle of that area, and now we need to place in our 7 pistons facing downwards. This is at the same layer as the glass. Once those are in place, put a layer of obsidian above all of that, and redstone dust above all of that as well. Now we're going to go ahead and place in ourselves a block right there and right there as well. Place a redstone dust above this entire back line all the way up to here, and then place in a repeater right there on 3 ticks. Make sure there's also a piece of redstone dust above that solid block. And now for the finishing touches, you want to place in a row of obsidian right next to all of these pistons right here, with 1 additional one on either end, of course, because it needs to be lined up with all of those pistons. And now for the main redstone clock, we're going to go down to this block right here and place in ourselves a sticky piston right there, an observer on its face facing away from the farm like so, and now we're going to put a redstone dust above that, a solid block to its side, repeater on top of that on 4 ticks, solid block right there, redstone torch, place yourself in a block right there, and then get in yourself a lever on that. If everything is working correctly, you should see a line of stone get generated right here in this area. We're now going to place in another sticky piston right here with another observer facing out away from the farm, and we need to replace this 1 glass block right here with a solid block. So if you want to, you can now go ahead and unflick that lever and test out your stone generator. It might take a second to get going, but once it gets going, it kicks out the stone, so don't leave it running for too long. And now we essentially need to build what we just built here on the other side as well. Like I mentioned earlier, it is mirrored, so basically every block that you place on that side, it needs to be placed on the opposite side as well. So once you have 2 of these stone generators, I would recommend testing both of them to make sure they do work correctly, and that'll also fill in stone into the entire middle area as well. So now go ahead and place in a bunch of glass underneath every one of your obsidian on the left and on the right side as well. That will contain your items and make sure that everything is collected by your hopper minecarts below. We now need to place in a line of glass on the front side of this build. For the final redstone line, we need to go to the left redstone torch, place in a solid block there and a solid block right there. Place in an upper line of slabs going across until you get to this piston. Then you want a solid block and an upper slab off of that torch. Place in yourself a repeater right there, redstone going all the way across this entire thing. We're going to place in an upper slab right here with a repeater on 3 ticks going into a solid block. We now want a piece of redstone dust right here, repeater on 4 ticks, solid block, and then a redstone dust. This right here is where the lever of the build is going to be going. If you flick that on, that should activate all of your cobblestone generators and everything should be good to go. We can now go ahead and remove our 2 temporary levers that we have on the left and the right sides. And now flip around to the front side of the build, and we need to install our hopper minecart unloader. So place in an upper slab right here, and then a solid block right there. We want a detector rail, and then one more temporary rail right there to make that a diagonal rail. Place in yourself another upper slab, a comparator going into a solid block with a redstone torch above it, solid block right there, redstone torch, solid block, and then an upper slab coming off of that. We're gonna have a redstone dust right there going into a solid block. Then grab yourself a sticky piston, place it right there facing downwards, and then we want an closed fence gate on the front of it like so. So that is of course just one slice of this build. Go ahead and build that 4 more times for these areas right here. So that is all 5 slices installed. Now we can go ahead and fill in these center blocks right here, and we also need to go ahead and install 2 repeaters, one right there and one right there. That way these things are completely independent of one another. We're now going to go ahead and place in a line of solid blocks above all 5 of those pistons, and a line of solid blocks right above this bit of redstone as well. Place redstone above all of those. Now we're going to install a little circuit that will turn off your minecart unloaders whenever you turn the farm off. This is a little bit of a janky circuit, but it does work. So we need an observer facing that piece of redstone dust, a solid block behind it, redstone torch right there, and then slabs in all 5 of these areas. Put a comparator going into that block, a comparator going in the opposite direction, 3 pieces of redstone dust, and then a solid block right here so that these 2 pieces of redstone don't canoodle. So whenever your farm is pulsing and turning on and off the pistons, that's going to activate the observer, power your comparator clock, which will unpower this redstone torch, sending all of your minecarts on their way. Whenever you turn off the farm, this clock will eventually decay, allowing you to collect all the last little items, and then all of your minecarts will go into the parked position. For item collection, we're going to go down 2 blocks from these slabs right here, and then place in ourselves a double chest facing sideways. We're going to want at least 5 of these, and that is going to get filled up pretty quickly with all of your moss blocks, etc. So go a block behind these, and you want a hopper facing into the backs of every single one of these double chests, a hopper facing into the tops of those double chests, and then another hopper facing into the sides of these ones right here. This is going to fill up your chests at 2 times speed, and now we need to put the hopper minecarts on top of these. So place in yourself some powered rails, and make sure these go into like this orientation. Make sure they're not facing sideways. Once you have them in this orientation, place in yourselves some glass panes on these blocks, and now we need to walk around the backside, remove these slabs for a moment, possibly this hopper as well, and place a hopper minecart on each one of these rails. The ones on the powered rails can just be nudged into place, but the ones on the edges, you'll need to walk into these and kind of push them into those glass panes a little bit more. Once they're all lined up, you can go ahead and put this hopper back into place and put in your slabs as well. That is your item collection done. These hopper minecarts will now grab all the items from the hopper minecarts above them. We also need to go ahead and place a hopper minecart on each one of these detector rails as well. So that is item collection completely done. As for a bone meal input, you can pretty easily grab yourself a little bit of a hopper line and then put a chest right here. Fill up that thing with as much bone meal as you want to. The final touch for the farm is the fact that we need to put in ourselves 1 item into this little hopper right here, and now we can turn on the lever, and we should see that we get ourselves a bunch of moss grown, and we're also getting the azaleas and the moss carpets and all of that good stuff. Now, one thing I will mention is that occasionally, maybe like 1 in 10, when you turn on the farm, it won't be perfectly synchronized, therefore your moss will not grow. So if you notice that you turn on your farm and no moss is growing, just turn off the farm and turn it back on. That is due to this little hopper counter down here getting desynchronized sometimes. Not entirely sure how to fix it, so if you notice that your farm's not bone mealing the moss, just turn it off, turn it back on. And we also need to add a little bit of a glass wall from this block right here going all the way off to the opposite side of the farm. That way no items fly out and land on the floor. We also need to add 2 glass blocks on that side and an additional 2 right here. And just after like 2 or 3 minutes of running the farm, every single one of these double chests already has like nearly 2 rows of items in it. Absolutely absurd. Converting this moss farm into a bone meal farm is actually a pretty simple task. However, it increases the noise factor by about 10 composters on machine gun mode. So what you need to do is replace your double chests out the front with a composter each, replace the hoppers on the backside pointing downwards into even more composters. That should be 10 in total. You want a hopper line underneath of both of those lines of composters going into one another, and then you lead those hoppers into a double chest. As you can see, that's producing a lot of bone meal. What's very important is that you actually intercept this hopper line with another one going underneath it to deliver bone meal back into your farm. You need to prioritize giving the farm bone meal before you put bone meal into your storage, because if you do it the other way around, your farm's going to stop producing eventually because it'll run out of bone meal. Anyway, as you can see, we have 4 droppers going upwards and then our dispenser at the top layer here. You'll take a redstone line off of this block with a redstone torch and just kind of run that into these 4 droppers. You'll want to prime these middle droppers with a couple pieces of bone meal each. That way you ensure they never run out and you don't accidentally decrease the efficiency of your farm. But yeah, as you can see, this entire dropper and all 3 of these hoppers are full of bone meal. That is good. That is how it should be. And once all of these are full of bone meal, the rest of the bone meal will be delivered directly into your chest, and all of this is pure profits. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding today's Bedrock Edition tutorial, then of course let me know in the comment section down below. I'm always trying to help you guys out as best as I possibly can. But otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a like on the video, possibly subscribe. Those are the 2 best ways to help support the channel. And thank you so very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. I'll see you guys down in the comment section and in the next one. And then there was silence.